Welcome to Salt of the Earth, Season 0, Episode 0. My name's Nicholas Alexander. I will be your host and running this show. First off, Salt of the Earth, or SOAT as I like to call it, our purpose is to create a community of authenticity and vulnerability through sharing our testimonies and life experiences to help others that maybe don't have that sort of community in their local area. Or maybe they do and they're struggling with something that they're keeping in secret, and we want to be able to encourage them to bring that into the light by first being the ones that are vulnerable and being that example. Because I believe that when you take your ugly parts and be vulnerable, that is actually the process to begin healing, to grow from that. And when you have a healthy community that will pour into you and not judge you, that is something that then inspires them as well to share their vulnerability, and it's a domino chain of healing and growth and community. Now about me. Of course, like I said, my name's Nicholas, if you don't know me. And of course, it'd be a little weird if I created a community about authenticity and vulnerability and didn't do that first myself. So that's what the remainder of this is going to be for. Now let's start from the beginning. When I was much younger, I think I was 4 years old, I was diagnosed autism, OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder, ODD, obsessive defiance disorder, and SPD, sensory processing disorder. Those labels were put on me from a young age and really dictated what my life path looked like up until I was an adult. And growing up, what that process, my parents were told that I was going to be needed to taken care of into adulthood, and that they were going to pretty much be forever parents. And while those things and struggles and labels and growing up with the social isolation and in and out of hospital visits was extremely difficult on me, it was difficult on my family as well. And that caused a lot of internal strife, which then compounded into a cyclical cycle of just negativity, toxic, and unhealthiness. SPD, or sensory processing disorder, for those who don't know, is an overstimulus from your senses. So pretty much your sight, hearing, taste, smell, all those are dialed up to 12. Breaking the dial and you're processing, that's your brain. And for me, in my experience, it would give me intense migraines and shut down my brain, would shut down my body. I'd lose sight, and I'd been completely blind before, lose taste, lose sensation in my body, not be able to walk just because I couldn't feel or move my limbs. And that was very scary because there was times it seemed that I just wasn't going to recover. And so I spent a lot of time in and out of the hospital growing up as well. And of course, that once again put a lot of strain and stress on my family. Growing up with those labels and that experience was definitely took an impact on my self-image. So I had no self-confidence, no self-belief, and just a terrible image of myself. And quite honestly, a very big victim mentality as well, because I was like, oh, I'm so oppressed all the time. And these experiences led to a lot of depression and anxiety, and led to a lot of drug use throughout that period, especially in my later teenage years. And from there, when I was 17 years old, I became like actively suicidal, actively self-harming, very depressed, in a very deep, dark place. And there was time that I had another sensory processing disorder episode that shut down my brain. And I was sent to the hospital again, was pumped full of drugs to recover. But during that time, I was pumped full of drugs. I wasn't quite able to lie anymore. And so when they came in and asked me the questions, and I answered honestly about where I was mentally, they're like, okay, cool. And when I came to, I was, in a room with lamps glued to the table, no blinds, no door handles. And I was like, I see what happened here. So from that point on, I was admitted to inpatient, outpatient, and went through that process for a summer. I actually spent my 18th birthday in there. And during that time, they taught me a lot of coping mechanisms, all surface level things that really helped me manage that and not be as actually self-destructive. But didn't fix the core problem, of course. So when I came out, I was like, well, my life's already terrible, so let's see what we can do to make it better. And so I took a huge path searching for truth. And I studied so many different worldly things, different worldly religions, agnostic, atheistic, Buddhism, Islam, and took those practices. And while I was surrounded by Christian influences, I was like, shut up, no. Of course, pushing it away. But during that moment of pursuing truth and going like, whatever, screw it, every time that I practiced the Christian ideals and the black and white stuff that the Bible teaches, I was like, well, my life kept getting better. So if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. And I started leaning into that a lot more. A major help with that was, of course, my family. And also when I left inpatient, I was introduced to a family that took me in and taught me everything about Christ through example. Because I was so actively pushing against that they just were examples of Christ over and over again with sharing love, despite how many times I continued to fail and fall and push against it and just really be an idiot. They just continually had a position of acceptance and lack of judgment. And that's really what has shaped who I am as a believer in Christ today. And I call them my spiritually adopted parents. They have the reason why I have the faith I have today and live the life is because of them. So if you're watching this, I love you guys very much. Throughout that journey, I didn't really start to take it seriously until I was about 20 and a half years old and really studied the Bible and was like, all right, I'm going to try this. And it took me about a year until I was about 21 and a half that I actually had an experience with Christ. And from there, I spent that time leaning into that more and more, learning, growing, and still fumbled, still had issues, still had habits and addictions and things, but just was really working on them and had that closeness in Christ in my heart. Shortly after I had an experience with Christ, that personal experience, a few months later, I was actually going to another church just for some event, and they had some worship going on. And to touch back to that SPD, I thought I couldn't be in loud situations or else it would cue up migraines and send me to the hospital, and it was really bad. And when I was like, all right, Lord, I want to be a part of worship. I want to know what this is like. I want to experience this, Lord. And I went to the very front of the room, and there was just one seat left, and I went up there, and I'm standing in front of the speakers, and I closed my eyes and I started praying that prayer as well. I said, Lord, please heal me of this so that I can experience your glory in this moment, and then I can practice worship and I can be closer to you, Lord. Please heal me. Please heal me. And like in an instant, I felt just the compression of my brain just had just a complete weight on it and being so relieved and opened. And the constant static and just confusion that my brain would spin up during those episodes just disappeared. And from that day forward, I have not had a single migraine. I have not had a single episode. I've had zero issues with sensory processing disorder, and I've been completely healed. And that was my experience of miraculous healing. From that point on, my faith has been unwavering, and because it's been life-changing. And after that, a few months later, when I was 22 still, I moved away from my family and my parents and moved to a completely different state here in Kansas City, Missouri, the better side. Sorry, not sorry. And when I came here, I felt called to go to Radiant Church when I was praying for what church should I go to. And I've been here ever since. And the community here has been just, again, another life-changing experience. Something I never had before, and has developed me and grown me so much. And I've learned that through vulnerability and through authenticity, the rate at which my growth has increased has been exponential versus what it was when I was alone and hiding. And that's really another thing that has inspired me to do what I'm doing here now with you. So all that being said, that's really my bird's eye view testimony. Quite honestly, it was a little bit difficult to share, and I know I'm recording this about to put it online, and that's a little bit nerve-wracking. But at the end of the day, authenticity and vulnerability is a superpower. And if you are able to be courageous and take that first step forward, I guarantee you it's going to be something that's going to inspire others to do so as well and create a healthy cycle of healing and growth. Because by no means am I done growing or am all good, no issues, no struggles. I'm still on this active journey. And so I hope that you decide to come with it and listen. We're going to have 3 episodes a week. So high volume, get ready to be inundated with all the content you possibly can absorb. But I love you. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. And that's episode 0. Let's head on over to episode 1. See you in the next one.